This presentation will be done on security by Emma Tingler, Abigail Thomas, Alexa Davis, and James Hudson. We'll be talking about why security is important. There are always hackers out there trying to steal personal information. This results in financial loss, things like credit card numbers, banking information, and banking passwords. There's identity theft. Things like names and social security numbers are stolen and used to open up different accounts. And also loss of intellectual property. Cybersecurity should always be on your mind, especially if you own a business or planning to own one in the future. Customers want to know that their privacy is secure. It's also important in terms of national security. There are a lot of jobs for cybersecurity specialists who have security clearances, and their top priority is making sure that the nation is secure. We are still susceptible to cyber attacks, including government networks and agencies, critical infrastructure like our power grid, military defense systems, and our voting systems. That's why it's important to have good, smart people who are in the way of these hackers. The four main data breaches that I will be discussing today include the Sony Pictures hack, the Equifax data breach, the Cambridge Analytica scandal, and Celebgate. The Sony Pictures attack occurred in November of 2014. It was committed by the Guardians of Peace. Now, the Guardians of Peace were actually operatives of the North Korean government. If anybody remembers or has seen the movie The Interview, you know that Kim Jong-un was not represented in a good light. The leader of North Korea thrives off of his public image, and the way he was depicted in that movie caused him to be very angry, and his regime retaliated by releasing private emails between the actors and producers. Some sources say that some of the emails were quite embarrassing for the employees. Also, they got a hold of personal data like social security numbers, addresses, and healthcare records. Also, information like budget information was stolen as well. Equifax is a major credit bureau that was hacked in July of 2017. This hack affected 147 million people. All kinds of information and private data was hacked, including social security numbers, birthdays, addresses, driver's license numbers, and credit card numbers. The breach was caused by a vulnerability in the Apache Struts software. Apache Struts is a widely used open sourced framework for building web applications, similar to ASP.NET for anyone that's taken C#. Equifax failed to patch the vulnerability, and this allowed hackers to get in. Equifax did face consequences for this, though. They were fined $570 million as part of a settlement, and the company also agreed to provide free credit monitoring service to those affected. The Cambridge Analytica scandal happened between 2013 and 2014, but it didn't become known until 2018. Now, Cambridge Analytica is a political consulting firm, and they had an app called This Is Your Digital Life. It was basically one of those personality quizzes that tell you what kind of personality you have and what your strengths and weaknesses are. Well, this app was actually data logging, which means they were collecting personal data from their users. And to make it worse, when Facebook became aware of this, they did nothing. And Cambridge Analytica used the psychological profiles that they built on these unsuspecting people for political targeting. Now, New York Times and The Guardian broke this story open in 2018, which caused Cambridge Analytica to be shut down in May of 2018. Facebook faced consequences for this in the form of a $5 billion fine. Celebgate happened in 2014. Attackers used phishing techniques to gain access to Apple iCloud accounts. They also exploited weak passwords and security questions. You know, when you're creating an account, sometimes you have to answer security questions like, what was the name of your first pet? Or what is your father's middle name? Well, with celebrities, a lot of this is public information or stuff they write on like their public feed. So it's important for all of us to be very selective of our questions and answers. The hackers got access to private and often intimate photos and videos stored on the iCloud. Over 100 people were affected by this, including Jennifer Lawrence, Ariana Grande, and Kate Upton.
The vulnerability of security breaches. The internet is undeniably a force that has consumed the law of society. It has taken over the lives of individuals and also big corporations and businesses. Within these organizations comes heaps of technological data. Due to the amount of reliance society has on technological forces, an insurmountable measure of data is in a place where we do not have full control over and is constantly at risk. Hackers are constantly keeping up to speed with the increase of new technology being made and improved. Measures can be taken to lower the risk of cybersecurity breaches, but there's a constant teeter in the balance of who's got the advantage on the power of the internet. Who is vulnerable to cyber attacks? Put simply and blunt, everyone is to some degree at risk if they use the internet. There is always a risk, but there are also levels to this risk. Some are more likely than others to have their security breached, some at larger scales and some smaller. Social categories are an example of how some are more likely to be at risk than others. The elderly are an example of a group that have been shown to be at a higher risk than younger individuals due to their lack of preparation and knowledge on how to detect scams and how to prevent digital danger. There is a lot of information that is to be digested when learning how to avoid phishing scams, installing protective software, and the steps to take if one's device has been compromised.
One of the most critical steps in avoiding data breaches is implementing robust security protocols. This includes using multi-factor authentication and encryption to secure sensitive information. Regular software updates ensure vulnerabilities are patched, and educating staff about common attack methods like phishing builds an informed frontline defense. Lastly, securing networks with firewalls and VPNs is essential for protecting data in motion. Continuous monitoring of networks is vital for detecting potential breaches. Tools like SIEM systems can help analyze large volumes of data for suspicious activity. Regular audits uncover weaknesses before attackers can exploit them. Finally, implementing alerts and segmenting networks ensure swift responses to limit damage from any breach. If a breach occurs, the first step is containment. Disconnecting affected systems prevents further spread. Next, the threat must be eradicated by removing malware and addressing security gaps. Informing those impacted is a legal and ethical obligation. Finally, recovery involves restoring data and applying lessons learned to prevent future breaches.
Laws and regulations for cybersecurity. What are cybersecurity regulations? These are legal requirements that dictate how a company should safeguard their data, digital assets, and networks from different cyber threats. These regulations deal with how a law should be implemented, and government agencies decide how to do this. Why are they important? It is important for a company to follow these regulations so they can safeguard sensitive information and to stay away from things like punishments, legal implications, and reputational harm. The US has many different laws and regulations regarding cybersecurity. A couple of examples of this would be the Graham-Leach-Bliley Act, or the GLBA, which concerns things like banks and was made to ensure that the customer's private data of these financial institutions was protected. Another example would be the Federal Information Security Act, or the FISMA. This let federal businesses make the development, application, and documentation of their security plans mandatory, and it was passed in 2002. Later, it was updated in 2014 by the Federal Information Security Modernization Act. There's also the Cybersecurity Information Sharing Act, or the CISA, and this was meant to encourage private businesses to share their cybersecurity threat information with the government and vice versa to defend against cyber attacks. Continuing with examples of cybersecurity laws and regulations, there's the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, or the HIPAA. This law forced the Department of Health and Human Services, or the HHS, to design regulations to defend against attacks targeting patients' private health information. So, the HIPAA Privacy Rule and the HIPAA Security Rule were made by the HHS. The Privacy Rule created national standards to defend the health information of patients, and the Security Rule protected the electronic transmission of this health information by also creating new national standards. Next, I will be talking about cybersecurity compliance. This is where should a new law or government agency create a new regulation or standard, then a business or corporation should obey and uphold this regulation. By following these new regulations, an organization can stop cyber attacks from happening, possibly reduce the damage resulting from a cyber attack. This is one of the things that makes it important for companies to abide by these new standards. Now, some information that is subject to cybersecurity compliance are PII, personally identifiable information, financial information, and protected health information. Examples of these different types of information will be someone's address, date of birth, social security number, or their full name for personally identifiable information, bank account information, and credit card numbers for financial information, and medical history, prescription records, and hospital admission records for protected health information.